Hey there, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and you caught me in the car yet again. I'm headed down to Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland, but it's not a new comic book day. No, this is a Saturday morning here, and it's a beautiful day, and I'm going down for a signing with the comic book writer, Scott Snyder. Now, you guys probably know him best as the writer on the New 52 Batman, the creator of the Batman Who Laughs, his work with Noctera, that was his creation at Image Comics. And just this previous new comic book day, his newest book, White Boat, just came out. And this is a release party signing that they're having right here. And I'm going down for the signing and got a lot of stuff to get signed. I picked up a lot of stuff. I've got a few other books I had already pulled to get signed. Can't wait to get down there. Now, part of this today, for Saturdays for me, if you guys haven't followed me before, is I still work on Saturdays. I work at Amazon and I still work on Saturdays, and I still need to get to work on time. And while this signing is free to the public, you can buy a VIP package that gets you in early in the first group that goes through, and it also gives you the privilege of getting more books than the average public can get signed. They have limits on the public. They increase those limits for the VIPs. Well, I normally buy these packages and they're $50 a piece, but I recently just joined an elite club with Third Eye Comics called the Wednesday Warrior Elite. And I talked about the benefits to this club in one of my previous videos, and I hope you guys get a chance to check that out. But among those benefits, the main thing for me was it gets you into the VIP line, in the early line, for any of these events like this. And then when they have a public signing like this, all you have to do is let them know 10 days in advance that you're going to be attending, and they'll put you down the list, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. As I said, these VIP packages cost $50 a piece. Well, I literally only paid $100 for this new club, and there's limited to only 300 people. And after today, in fact, I will have paid off this club because I just went to another signing 2 weeks prior to this with Philip Kennedy Johnson. And I would have had to done the same thing. To get in early and get out early, I would have had to buy that VIP package at $50 a piece. Well, after today, that club membership now is going to be paid for, and it's a lifetime pass. So as long as Third Eye Comics is in business, I've got a free access to every comic book signer that comes in to be in that first group, that VIP group to go in. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going down a little bit earlier than I normally do because I expect to be a big crowd down here today. I'm trying to get in there a little bit earlier than normal, so even the VIP line will back up. So I'm trying to be in still the first part of that group so it doesn't take too long for me to get through the line. I will try to take some footage from inside the store, and when I get home, I will show off everything that I get. So sit back, enjoy the footage, and I'll be back in just a few moments. All right, guys, I just finished up at Third Eye Comics with the signing with Scott Snyder, and I had a great time. It really pays off to buy the VIP package, or like I said earlier, be part of this Wednesday Warrior Elite Club that lets you have the VIP privileges already. And because the line was long, you may have seen some of the footage there that I shot of the line going into the store. They had a big public line, and they had a big VIP line. In fact, they sold out of the VIP packages. It was so popular. And I was lucky that I was probably about 10 or 15 people back in line. I didn't have to wait too long, and I was able to get through the line pretty good. I wish I could have spent some more time filming Scott Snyder and him signing, but we actually got up there so quick, and I had stuff to get signed. So I was trying to prep all those books and just have them ready in my hand, ready to go, and then film at the same time. So it was a little cumbersome, and I did try to shoot a little bit of footage. So I wish I'd shot more, but I hope you enjoyed some of that footage right there. But once I get home, I'm going to bag and board everything back so it's nice and safe, and I'll show off everything I got, including some special items as well. But it was so cool meeting Scott Snyder. I think that was the first time I've ever got to meet him in person. But it's funny, when I got up in line, the first thing he said was, "Hey, have we met before? You look familiar." And I said, "I don't think so. Maybe it was last year in Baltimore Comic-Con." I know it wasn't, only because I didn't get a chance to get him to sign anything last year. I remember that on that last day, it was finally, I got down to Scott Snyder, and I didn't have enough time. And when time I did have left, he had already finished signing. He wasn't signing anymore. So I was so happy that Third Eye was hosting him today. So I guess I just have one of those faces. I'm Mr. Generic, maybe. Anyway, it was great talking with him. I got to talk to him mostly about how much of a fan I was of, and am, of the Batman Who Laughs. That was the character that got me back into DC Comics. I had drifted away from DC Comics greatly in the early 2000s. In fact, the only book that I was reading at the time, the only two books I was reading was the JSA and the Secret Six. That was the only two books. I had dropped everything. Batman, Superman, everything. And when the Dark Knights, the Batman Who Laughs came out, he'd already been introduced, I guess, in the Teen Titans book, but when those one-shots came out for the Dark Knight's Metal series, those one-shots, the one with the Batman Who Laughs, that image, that Jason Fabok image on the front cover, I saw that on Facebook, and I'm going, oh my God, who is that character? I've got to know who this is. And that image alone, and then the story in that book, that one-shot by James Tynion, just drew me back into that character, drew me back into Batman. I've told the same story to James Tynion. He wrote that story, and my understanding was Scott Snyder was the one who created that character, but it turns out James Tynion, I think Scott said that he's the one who named him. So that was pretty cool. I got a couple of those books signed that were already signed by James Tynion. I'll show those off as well. But that was so cool to be able to spend some quality time for a few minutes, and I probably took up more time than I should have getting what I had signed and chatting him up, and it was great to be able to get a photo with him as well. But man, what a great time. If you guys have never been to a Third Eye Comics signing, they put on a great show down here. It's well organized, great time. I can't wait to see who the next signer is going to be. But once I finished up and I packed everything away and I took the books that I purchased for the signing up to the counter, before I did all that, I'm walking around and I'm going, hey, the Doom #1 comic just came out over a week ago. I wonder if they still have some copies, because cover price, brand new books are going for 3 times cover price right now on eBay. And I'm going, well, if I can pick up an extra couple copies of that, maybe I'll have something to put away or maybe even sell. I don't know. Let's go and see what they still have left. And they had some of that one cover. I don't remember the artist, but the painted cover of Doom that I talked about in the new Comic Book Day video. Cannot remember the artist's name, but what a fantastic cover. They did have some of those left. Most of them had a little bit of spine damage, but I was able to pick a couple copies out of that. But while I'm doing that, there was a fellow still in line, and there's still a big line for Scott Snyder. There was a fellow at the end of the line. He starts waving me over, and I don't know who this is. And it turns out it was a fan of the channel, and his name's Rob, and I took a photo with him, and he was so excited to see me. And he's getting these kids into comics, and I'm one of those channels that he watches, and it's because I guess I do the kind of channel I do new comics, I do old comics, I do a little bit of everything. I don't focus in on just one thing, but I'm such a fan of the hobby. That's what this channel has become. It's like you can watch all the different aspects of the comic book hobby through me. Maybe not the multi-$1,000 books and these big giant CGC unboxings, but I do my fair share of CGC. I do my fair share of signings. I do lots of new comic book days, and I do lots of comic book hauls. That's the kind of channel that I do. And he had been watching the channel, and he was such a fan, and we ended up taking a photo that was so cool. I don't get recognized often because I don't travel too much outside of this region, and it's great to be recognized. I am part of this Baltimore, Washington YouTube comic book community. I'm the redheaded stepchild. I'm the 4th place runner-up right now because we've got some big channels here in the area. Not the first one really is Ryan from Automatic Comics. What a great channel. If you guys are watching my channel, I'm sure you've been watching him. He focuses in on the big books, Golden Age, Silver Age. He knows his history. He talks CGC. He can go buy lesser graded Golden Age books and know what those values are when they get them graded. Just absolutely a wealth of knowledge. Great channel. You've got cool stuff, collectibles. Rob right there, he comes to Third Eye all the time. He sets up at the shows in the area. Great guy, great channel. He does a variety of different topics on his channel with comic books. And then you got Longbox Love Affair, who does probably a lot more than I do on the higher end books, but he is also a dollar bin diver, and he shows up at Third Eye all the time and the local shows. What a great collector. Both of them have really good channels, bigger than mine. I mean, I'm doing okay, but I'm following the pack, and those guys are leading by example, and I'm just glad to be part of this community in this area right here. And I was so appreciative of someone recognizing me, and thanks, Rob, for spending some time with me, and I was glad to get to meet you. So hopefully you get to watch this channel at some point. Anyway, guys, I'm headed home. I'm going to bag and board the comics like I said, and I will do a show and tell, and I'll show off everything I got. So once again, stay tuned, and I'll be right back.
Many unbearable hours later.
All right, everybody, I finally made it back home. I got a chance to re-bag and board everything, so it's nice and presentable. Let's go through the books that I picked up at the Scott Snyder signing. Some of these I got signed were my books, and some of them were the ones I picked up at the store. It's kind of a mix right now. But let's just get into it, and I've broken them down by category. Let's start off with his creation with Image Comics Noctera. This is issue number 1. And I never had this copy. I only had the Jock version, the cover that Jock did. And that's a book that I actually got graded and sold as 9.8s back in the day. But I never had the version A, cover A to this by Tony S. Daniel. And yeah, that's a very nice cover. You can see, it's a little harder to see right there on camera, but in person the black actually does pretty good. His signature's right there. And a book that I had never read was his Image Comic Witches. And I thumbed through this after I picked it up from Hello Comics on a recent trip. And I couldn't believe how many copies of this book that they had there. And I picked up a couple, but I only got one of them signed. And his silver paint pen was working really well on this book. And I read through this before I actually got up there to get it signed, and oh my god, I think I've missed out. That was what a scary story that was. I think I'm going to have to go back and start picking up some of the issues or maybe some of the trade paperbacks on this book, because I definitely missed out on that. This actually is a Jock cover. We just mentioned him from Noctera, but that's a Jock cover right there. But when you think of Scott Snyder, I think most people, the first thing you think of is his run with Greg Capullo on Batman. And so I brought some key issues, and I picked up a couple of key issues from the store. I picked up his Batman #1 from the New 52. And he signed it right up there. And as you can see by these books as we go on, I've got projects that are coming up. So I'm going to have to find Greg Capullo to add him to this book, just like there's going to be other projects down the road here from some of these other books. I'm going to have to add additional creators. I'm just making more work for myself, but it kind of goes back to what is one of the favorite things in this hobby is for me to work on projects with these books, get multiple creators on the same book. And I have a lot of fun doing that. It's a never-ending quest, and I just enjoy that probably more than just the actual collecting themselves. It's the entire thing, enjoying the book and then getting to meet the creators that actually signed that book, and then the journey, the struggle to eventually acquire the additional signatures from all the creators that you can get on there. But if I got Batman number 1, you know I've got Batman number 6, the first appearance of the Court of Owls. This is a really nice copy, and I would have considered possibly getting it graded down the line. It's got a few ticks in the back, so I may just keep that as a raw and not worry about getting it graded. Kind of hard to not have that urge to get everything graded. And I think what it is a lot of times I enjoy getting these things signed, but then you start assigning values to things and you worry about, well, if it's a 9.8, maybe I shouldn't get it signed. It kind of distracts from the enjoyment of it a little bit, but this is still a really good book. I may consider getting it graded at some point, but it's got, as I said, some minor ticks that will knock it down. It would be nice then to have it 9.8, knowing that if it was lower graded, it would distract from what a great cover and great signatures would be on this book. So, and then the last Batman book that I picked up was Batman number 13, and you've got this die-cut cover with the Joker. Now, I had stopped reading Batman around issue 6. I had gotten very tired of the reboots at DC, and back in that time, 2011, 12, I was cutting back on a lot of the books. I just was not enjoying them. And every now and then I'll get to the point where, why am I buying this? I'm buying them out of habit as a collector, and I just have a coming to Jesus moment when I'm going, I'm just putting money out for books I don't enjoy it. Just stop. And if there's something good that comes out, go buy that. If you missed it, for example. And I definitely missed this part of the storyline, but this was such a cool cover with the die cut. And I have to actually go back and read the storyline. I've never read the storyline around that time. I had something to do with the Joker getting his face cut off. I don't know. Again, I wasn't reading Batman at the time, but what a cool Batman cover this was. All right. The other thing that Scott Snyder is known for, of course, is his run with, again, Greg Capullo at DC on the Dark Knights miniseries Metal, and then the follow-up Death Metal. And this is a book that I couldn't find in my PC quick enough. My recent trip to Hello Comics, they didn't have this copy, or at least a good copy of this. But right there at the line, I don't think you could catch a glimpse of it in the very limited footage that I shot. But they had a rack of books that Scott Snyder did, and they had one whole side that was completely Dark Knight's Metal, the first issue. And this is the one that I was looking for and I couldn't find. And I really wanted that because this one is what really kicked off. Oops, hang on. Let's take some of these books down. Oop, making a mess. Hang on. This is the book that really kicked off all the stories that I really liked at DC, using the Batman Who Laughs, and we'll talk more about him in a few minutes. Just what a great arc, great stories. Really enjoyed this whole miniseries. I collected the whole thing. I just couldn't put my hands on quick enough to pull it out of the PC. And again, when I stopped, luckily, Third Eye had this and some other copies of Dark Knight's Metal and Death Metal that I could pick up, as well as the ones that I picked up at Hello Comics a week prior. But I picked this up, got him to sign it, and he went, "You rock," on there. And then he did, here was Death Metal number 1 as well. Got that foil embossed cover. And here, let me set these down. And then I was finding some variant covers that I had never seen before. This is Death Metal number 1, but it is a art germ cover with Wonder Woman. And like most art germ covers with female characters, it's always really strong. And thankfully, this is a book. Again, here we go back to, I want to get it graded because I've never met Art Germ in person, but he does CGC signings periodically. And now that CGC is verifying witnesses through JSA, I could send this in, have the Scott Snyder signature verified, and then have the witnessed Art Germ signature on this cover. So that would be a kind of a cool project down the road. And this is a book that I had speculated on when it came out and did pretty good on it, selling some of the 9.8s I got on it. I think it's the first appearance of Robin King. Not his first appearance in a comic, but his first cover appearance. It is a variant of issue number 3, I believe, of Death Metal. Yeah, issue number 3. The silver paint pen really pops on there as well. I really like this cover. Robin King was not one of my favorite characters from the Dark Metal, but I did like this cover a lot. Now, here we get into the character that I'm going to be talking about a little bit more. A book I didn't have. I had the regular cover, but I didn't have this variant of Death Metal number 7. But there you have The Batman Who Laughs by David Finch. And man, that is a killer cover. This is a book right now that has got to go with me down to Charlotte. David Finch is going to be at Heroes Con this year. I wasn't considering getting anything by David Finch at this time. I'd gotten just about everything currently up to this point that I was wanting to get signed. That's got to go with me. I've got to get David Finch on this now. What a great cover. So this was going to be probably one of the bigger project pieces, because now I've got to get Finch and I got to get Greg Capullo as well. So that's going to be more of a challenge. But that's what's so much fun about this hobby. Just give time and go to cons and get to meet these creators. I love it. All right, let's put these down and we'll get to the books that really I was more excited about than anything. Now, these I already had because they were already signed by previous creators. And I'm going to start with the book I talked about a little bit maybe before in the video earlier that got me back into Batman, at a point when I had dropped DC Comics except for maybe the JSA and the Secret Six. It was the only 2 titles I had been reading for years, and at some point I think when they did a reboot, eventually they dropped everything, and I wasn't even getting anything from DC except for maybe a special publication every now and then with Batman especially. But when they introduced The Batman Who Laughs, I think it was in the Teen Titans. I've never had that issue, but when the Dark Knights Metal series came out, they put out a series of one-shots, and with each of the variant Batman characters. And all of them were I can't say the word, but he's, a mix of the other Justice League members. You had the Green Lantern version, the Flash version, Superman version, Wonder Woman version, but the one that hit home for me was this one right here, The Batman Who Laughs, the combination of him and the Joker. And I saw this image on Facebook, just scrolling through all the comic book sites that I go through, and when this book came out, they put that image online, and I was just blown away. And I had to know everything I could to know about this character. And I read the story by James Tynion, and I'm going, oh my God, this is fantastic. Now, I enjoyed every one of those Dark Knights one-shots. I think those were better than the Death Metal miniseries itself. In fact, I was a little lukewarm on the series, but these one-shots were all fantastic. And this one, to me, was by far the best. You had James Tynion writing, and I wasn't familiar with the artist on this. Who was this? This was Rossmo? I've never seen that artist before. I think he did work on a later Harley Quinn series when they rebooted that book. Wasn't much of a fan. I think he's been to other DC things that I've not really read, because I really haven't picked up DC much other than Batman. But I enjoyed this artwork in there a lot. I enjoyed the story, and it just blew me away. And when James Tynion showed up at Third Eye Comics, I definitely had to get this book signed by him, and you can see his signature right up here. But what I didn't realize was the question kind of popped up. Who actually created the character, the Batman Who Laughs? I wasn't sure. And turns out it was Scott Snyder with some help or partial help from James Tynion. I think definitely it was Scott Snyder. So I go up there and I talk to him about this. I've talked about the character, what it meant to me. It was kind of the same story I gave to James Tynion when I got the book signed too, because his story is what got me back into Batman and on his run on Batman at the time. And he was very appreciative of that. And when I looked up that Scott Snyder's the one who actually created his character, that gave me something I could talk to him about. And as we're talking, he said James Tynion was the one who actually gave this character that name. They were just throwing around ideas, and he made a decision. It's like, nope, that's the name. We're done. That was it. And it was cool to be able to take this and get Scott Snyder to sign. And I actually had done a couple signings with James Tynion, so I've done this book twice with him. So I got Scott Snyder to sign both of them. But I made a big mistake. A few weeks prior, I went to Fan Expo up in Philadelphia to see the Jeff Johns Ghost Machine lineup of artists, including Jason Fabok. And it didn't dawn on me until I was getting ready to do the Scott Snyder signing with this book. Didn't dawn on me to look up who did the cover art for this. I mean, honestly, it was the art from this particular cover right here that got me into that character. It was a story, yes, but it was this image. And it was by Jason Fabok. And I'm going, you idiot. You idiot. You were right up in Philadelphia. Jason Fabok's right there. He's signing all of your Batman 3 Jokers. He's signing your Ghost Machine books that he's working on. And you completely failed to get this signed. And I've got a tick that when I make a mistake like this, I will forego other opportunities to make up for that mistake, and even if it is detrimental to the hobby, for example. And right now, I'm counting on the fact that I'm going to get a chance to see Jason Fabok again. There's an outside chance that the Ghost Machine lineup will be at the Baltimore Comic-Con this year. I don't think anything's been announced, but there's rumors of it, and I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. Keep my fingers crossed that Fabok will be there, and I can take both copies right here to get him to sign that. That will actually, it'll be great. It'll feel good. But again, I've got this tick that I've got to correct a mistake I made. And that was a mistake. That was a huge mistake on my part. So, but I will continue the journey of getting this signed down the road. I just hope I get another opportunity. And then the last comic that I've got one more after this, but the last comic that I brought from home was this right here. Detective Comics 1000. It is the Frank Miller variant cover. And I've shown this multiple times on this channel at this point. I continue to get it signed by as many creators that worked on this big, giant, square-bound book as possible. And I'm going to take it up, and I don't know if I'm just going to move it around a little bit. There's signatures all over the place. I mean, it started with James Tynion right there, and there's Brian Michael Bendis, and right below that's Brad Anderson, the colorist. I think the last ones, I just added some of the Ghost Machine artists on here. I'll go down the list. I've got it written right here. James Tynion, Brian Michael Bendis, Steve Epting, Brad Anderson, the colorist, Peter Tomasi, again, another member of that Ghost Machine creator group, Jeff Johns, of course, who's head of that whole thing, Jason Fabok. There you go, Jason Fabok on this book, but I didn't take those. Now I've added Scott Snyder to this, and there's still another list here. Christopher Priest, I got him at a con just about a month ago. But the big one I still need on here is Frank Miller, and we talked about that. It was funny. Scott Snyder was going through the cover here, and he said, "Oh my God, look!" It's like, "Oh, who's that? Oh, that's such and such. Oh, that's such and such." And he couldn't figure out who this was. And I said, well, that's Brian Michael Bendis. And I said, at some point, I'm hoping to get to see Frank Miller again. And he said, okay, he's going to sign, instead of signing in this open area in the middle, he signed, where was it? Yeah, he signed right up here. Let's see if I can show it. It's a little hard on the camera there. And he said, yeah, Frank always signs really big. And he said, it is his cover. So he left the middle open for Frank Miller. So that was pretty cool. Who else do I need? Amanda Connor is somebody that's very available. Tom King is somebody that is at cons that I go to. Down the road, Jim Lee is in the book as well. And he's going to be at Baltimore Comic-Con. I'll have to add him. Yeah, there's a few other people. Paul Denny. And, of course, Frank Miller, we talked about. So I can still do a lot of damage on this book with signatures. It's going to be a fun project. Unfortunately, Neil Adams has passed. He worked on the story with Christopher Priest. And if you go back and watch the video I did on the Big Lick Comic Con in Northern Virginia about a month or so ago, you will hear the story I talked about how Christopher Reeve worked with Neil Adams on that story. And when I said something, he said, no, he got worked over by Neil Adams on that book. He wrote a story, and Neil then turned around and basically turned it into the story he wanted to tell. So yeah, it was kind of funny. I think Christopher Priest was a little bummed about that, I guess. But what a great book to get worked on. And what did I just mention? I said that was the last book from home that I brought. But I did pick up a couple other things. As you know, this signing came on the heels of New Comic Book Day, and Scott Snyder's new book, White Boat, had just come out. And it was on the stands, but they had them right there on the table for you to purchase. So I picked up a couple copies of White Boat. This was cover A, and you can see it's this giant black label kind of format that DC started. And boy, did that signature pop right on there. That looks fantastic. But I also picked up this right here. It was the variant cover by Kelly Jones. And it also pops on the silver paint pen. And that was real fun. And we talked about the book just a little bit. And I told him, I said, I hadn't really got a chance to read it. It had just come out. But I said, I thumbed through and it looks interesting and the art looks fantastic. And he said, thank you. It's always tough to start a new book that doesn't have any kind of history or anything. And I'm excited to see where this goes as well. But that was not the last things that I got signed. It's the end of the comic books. But I got to show you this. This is my special 30-plus year project book right here with my daughter's book cover that I picked up when she was like in 2nd or 3rd grade. I took one of her book covers from school to do this book. It is the, let's see if I can open it up here. It is the 5 decades. I always get the title wrong. Hang on. It is the 5 fabulous decades of the world's greatest comics from Marvel. And this is the book that I started on in 1993 up at what is now the Fan Expo that I've talked about earlier in the video. It is now, back then it was the Philadelphia Comic Fest. And I started on this book with a bunch of the big Marvel old-time creators on this page right there. People like Romita Sr., Dick Ayers, the Simonsons, Jim Steranko's on that page, Sal Buscema's on there. I mean, getting just tons of these creators from the early days, the big classic creators. And then it expanded over the years. I filled that page up, and then I started expanding on some of the other big spreads. And look at all those signatures. And I've got another spread in there that's got Dave Gibbons on it, for example. But then I started getting around to finally back 10 or so, 12 years ago, I finally got Stan Lee at the Baltimore Comic Con. And I didn't feel like sticking him on a page like that by himself. And I literally started on the page with Cap's shield right there. And you can see Stan Lee's autograph right below my fingers right there. There's Bill Sienkiewicz. Todd McFarlane's down there. Frank Miller's down there. And I've added a couple others. Neil Adams is on there. And this one's starting to fill up a little bit more than I would have liked. But I've got Art Adams and Andy Kubert's there. Mike Grail. And I wasn't going to bring the book because, as far as I knew, Scott Snyder didn't do any work for Marvel. And I went back and I was looking on, I usually look up the creator list on comicbookpriceguide.com, and it didn't list anything for Marvel. And I'm going, okay, I guess I'm not bringing the book. But I had it in the car. As I'm sitting in the car, or sitting there in line, I'm looking up and I'm going, I got to double check this. Let's look at a different source. So I just literally went to Wikipedia and I went to his bibliography and his career. And it turns out that Scott Snyder did have a cup of coffee at Marvel. I think it was with the Marvel Projects books. I think those were some of the ones that Steve Epting might have been working on at the time. And Okay, so even if you've got a cup of coffee at Marvel, I don't just stick you in this book, but you got to be a pretty decent name for this to go into this book. It is a Marvel book after all. But so you've got to be somebody of some significance to go in here if you've only got a cup of coffee with Marvel, but you've got that prestige and everything. So I went ahead and added Scott Snyder to this, and look at this. Down at the bottom of the page, right below my fingers, he signed it, and then he put Batman's ears, and he wrote Batman and put an arrow right there. And I thought, man, that is super cool. The only regret was I didn't have my blue Sharpie ready to go. Usually I get everything in blue in here, but over the last couple years, especially, it's gotten away. You may have seen the Art Adams in red pen that he signed. There was a story about that as well that I can always tell again if you're ever interested. But that was super cool to add him to that book. I would have regretted that, having this opportunity to get him to sign and then come back and finding out that I should have gotten him in the book. So anyway, that was super fun. But actually the very first item that I got signed was this right here. Not a comic book, but it's what got me into Funkos. It is the Batman Who Laughs Funko. And I'm going to hold it right there, but you can see Scott Snyder signed that right there on the front. Now I've got to go get a protector for this. But I was not going to get into Funkos at all. I thought they were interesting. Let's see if I can sit. I don't think this is going to sit there. Tell you what, let's put this down, and we'll put his white book back up there. I wasn't going to get into Funkos, but when that character came out, like I said about the comic book, the Batman Who Laughs, I fell in love with that character, and then the Funko came out, and I'm going, I've got to have this. Turns out, Third Eye had one of these sitting on shelves. It's like a $75 item now, and it kind of got me opened up. Now, I'm not a super collector, but I still pick up Funkos of characters that I like. That kind of got me into it. But that is my very first Funko, and it's my very first Funko that I've ever gotten signed. And it was super cool with a character that I just love. So anyway, guys, I had a lot of fun at Third Eye Comics. I hope you guys will check out their website, and you can see any of the upcoming events that they've got going on. I had a great time. I was super thankful to be part of the Wednesday Warrior Elite Club that gets me into all of these signings into the VIP group for free. At this point, I've already paid for the package. And what's I mentioned earlier in the video, what's great about that is all I have to do is let them know in advance, and it gets me into that early access VIP line, which is something I need to do on these signings. For me, it's a work day. I got to get in early, and I need to be at the beginning of that line so I can get in and out and into work on time. And for these days, I don't have to pay for those packages anymore, and that's going to be great. Cut down on the cost, and it's a lifetime membership. So every signing at Third Eye Comics I can go to, as I said, just need to give them a little bit of warning, let them know 10 days in advance that I'm going to be there and I'm right on the list. And what a great benefit to belonging to this club at Third Eye Comics. But that's it, guys. Definitely leave me a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think of the books that I've picked up. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please hit that like button, slap the subscribe, and click on that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any of the content I put out each and every week, Mondays and Fridays at 10 a.m. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you for the next show. Just remember, every comic has a story.